Hey everyone, today I thought I would do a quick review and ranking of the Silent Night Trilogy. So, I read and reviewed these two books earlier in December and included them in my December reading wrap-up, so I'll try not to get too detailed here. I'll try to keep this video relatively short. And then, at the end of the month, I decided to read the final book in the trilogy, Silent Night 3. And yeah, I just decided to do a quick ranking video and talk about these books a little bit. So, let's just jump right into it. As usual, with these ranking videos, I'll work my way from my least favorite one up to my favorite. One thing I do want to mention too that I forgot is the covers of these books are actually really cool. And I think they get better as they go along. This one is really cool. Tagline for this one is Jingle Bells, Santa Kills. And then on the back it says Silent Night, Bloody Night. And then the third one has the best cover, in my opinion. Love all of the mannequins and Riva being all dramatically scared and everything. And the tagline for this one is "'Tis the season to die." So yeah, I just love the aesthetics of these books and everything, and the taglines, and they're just very cool. I really like the appearances of these. So, starting with my least favorite one, we have Silent Night 2. Now, the reason this one is my least favorite is, well, there's a lot of reasons, but the big reason is the three villainous characters in this book, the three teenaged criminals that try to kidnap Riva. They're completely idiotic, and the majority of the plot revolves around them trying to kidnap her. They try it multiple times, they fail multiple times, and it's just very, very silly. I really can't take it seriously. And they're essentially trying to kidnap her to get a ransom from Riva's father, who's very rich. They figure they can get $1 million or whatever, and then run off and escape and live off that money for the rest of their lives. And it's just kind of silly and ridiculous, and I really couldn't take it seriously. And I just could not really get into this book very much at all, to be honest. And another thing that really bothered me about Silent Night 2 is there's very little to no continuity in this book. From the first one, there's really no character consistency or character growth. We saw some character growth at the end of the first book with Riva, as well as Pam. And at the start of Silent Night 2, all of that is just completely retconned. We just start over on a clean slate. Riva's back to being a jerk again. She's even more of a jerk in this book than she is in the first one. And yeah, I just could not really get into Silent Night 2, to be honest. I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. And yeah, this is definitely my least favorite of the trilogy. Did not care for this book that much at all, to be honest. So yeah, Silent Night 2 is at the bottom of my ranking. Coming in at second place is Silent Night 3. Now, I almost didn't read this book. Like I said, I read the first two pretty close together, and I almost just was going to set this one aside and maybe read it next year or something, but I just decided why not. I'll just give it a quick read. They're short books. And this one actually surprised me a little bit. I enjoyed this one more than 2. Well, obviously, it's above number 2 on my ranking. And one of the reasons I enjoyed this one more is instead of 3 annoying, very annoying characters we got in the second book, we only have 1 annoying character in this book. Riva brings home a friend from college. Her name is Grace, and she is the most annoying and whiny and just dumb character in probably this entire trilogy, alongside those the 3 teenage criminals from the second book, honestly. I did not like her character at all. She's just always complaining and just, I don't know. Her character is just very annoying. She's just very whiny and complaining about everything. She's scared of her own shadow constantly. Now, Riva brings her home from college to stay with her for the holiday because she's trying to escape an abusive ex-boyfriend, which is understandable, and is actually kind of an interesting plot point considering Riva is not exactly the nicest person in the world. So it's kind of like an act of kindness on her part. But then Riva starts getting annoyed with Grace and gets sick of hearing her cry all the time and constantly getting freaked out thinking every shadow is her ex-boyfriend coming to beat her up or whatever. And that's understandable too, because I was getting annoyed by it as well. And her Grace's character is just very inconsistent, and she'll say and think one way, and then the very next second she'll flip and start thinking and saying the other way, and it's just very odd. And I'm like, what is the deal with this character? And fortunately, it does kind of make sense without spoiling anything. Grace's just very strange attitude kind of works its way into the plot later in the story and has to do with a certain twist that takes place. But yeah, I was just annoyed by her character. I'm like, I hope her boy. I don't know. I won't get into that, but yeah. And this one I just enjoyed more because I feel like the plot was a little bit more realistic. It just wasn't, as ridiculous as them getting kidnapped, and it made a little bit more sense. And Riva was still kind of Riva in this book, still very mean and doing childish things and just being cruel to people, typical to her character. But I don't think it was quite as bad as number 2. Number 2 felt like the most overdramatic version of Riva, in my opinion. Unfortunately, the characters overall didn't get as much depth in this book. Pam especially. Pam is Riva's cousin, and she plays a very significant part of the story in Silent Night 1, as well as Silent Night 2. And in third book, she's probably the most sidelined character. She's here just to pretty much serve a plot point in this book about starting a fashion show. Essentially, Pam brings these homemade scarves to Riva, and Riva's father, of course, is the owner of a big shopping mall. And they decide to start selling these scarves. And during the fashion show, models are killed, and then basically someone starts threatening Riva, kind of like in the first book all over again. Someone's out to get her, to get revenge, and yeah, that's pretty much the plot of this one, along with Grace constantly freaking out, thinking her ex-boyfriend is coming to get her. So there's kind of like 2 plots going on in this book, and it was okay for the most part. Definitely better than 2. Not a lot better. I think I give this one like a 2.5 out of 5 stars, so I enjoyed this one a little bit more than 2. Again, it only has 1 annoying character in here instead of 3, but yeah, this wasn't too bad of a book. I enjoyed Silent Night 3. And like I said too, I think this one has the coolest cover art. Unfortunately, it still isn't holding on to much continuity from the first book, but it wasn't bad overall. Oh, and another thing I almost forgot to mention is Michael, Riva's younger brother, makes a return in this book, where he was absent in the second one. And I kind of like his character. I kind of like reading about him. He plays a more significant part in the story in this book, and it's kind of interesting. His character behaves very differently than from what he does in the first book, and it's a little bit odd, I guess. Not really, considering the circumstances. I'm remaining a little bit vague to avoid spoilers because of the certain role he takes part in the story, but I liked it. It was kind of funny, kind of cute, and yeah, I kind of like Michael as a character, kind of interesting. So yeah, Silent Night 3 comes in second place. And my favorite Silent Night book is, of course, the first one. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this Fear Street novel is that Riva's character, honestly, is probably my favorite part of the book. And I know a lot of people don't like her, and she is kind of a jerk at times, but she's also kind of a layered character. And the fact that so many people who read these books can either despise her or love her, or kind of like I do, sympathize with her and actually think her character is pretty cool, is the fact that she's pretty believable. Like, R.L. Stine does a pretty good job of creating a believable character, and sadly, that's not something he does very often. Many of you probably know, who read these types of books, that R.L. Stine's characterization is not always the best, and in here, he does a pretty good job of creating good characters, I think, with actual personalities to them. And I really like Riva's character. I think she's pretty cool. She actually has some growth and like changes a little bit, especially by the end of the book, which unfortunately isn't really carried through with in the sequels, but nonetheless, it's still there. And this one, I think, is just the most solid Silent Night book overall. It has the best plot. Of course, this one has all of the typical ingredients from Stine. There's the murder mystery. There's the pranks, the 90s vibes, and then, of course, all of the winter and Christmas themed atmosphere and vibes and all that kind of stuff going on. And essentially the plot of this very first book is someone is out to get Riva. Someone's playing cruel pranks on her, and the pranks get more serious and more deadly, and she starts getting scared, and like someone is very clearly out trying to kill her. And yeah, this was a pretty good Silent Night book, or pretty good Fear Street book overall. I really enjoyed this one. One of the better Fear Street books, I think. Again, I didn't absolutely love it. There were some things that brought my rating down. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, the ending isn't the best. Not the ending itself, but all of the twists we get at the end and all the big reveals. It's pretty typical of Stein for everything to not really completely make sense. There's a few loose ends and things like that. Again, that's kind of typical of Stein. He likes to have a bunch of big twists at the end, and some of them just feel like they're kind of shoehorned in there and don't fully mesh with the rest of the plot. I wish this book had just been a little bit more streamlined and not had so much different stuff going on, and then tried to wrap it all up towards the end. But overall, it was still a pretty good book. And like I said, I really like Riva's character, and just the different character dynamics in this book relating to her. And like I said, the plot was pretty decent. I wanted to keep reading this book. I was interested. I was wondering what was going to happen next. So yeah, not a bad book. Again, 3.5 out of 5 stars. One of the better Fear Streets. I still have yet to read a Fear Street book that's really blown me away. One that I've absolutely loved, and I really don't think that will happen, to be honest. These Fear Street books are all pretty similar, just cheesy fun, murder mystery, and teen drama, and all that good stuff. I really find it hard to believe if I come across one that'll get higher than like a 4-star rating for me. But anyways, those are my reviews and rankings for the Fear Street trilogy. Again, just to kind of recap here, the second one is my least favorite. Did not care for this one much at all. Silent Night 3 was... dropped it there. Silent Night 3 was a little bit better. This one was decent. I enjoyed it. Not a great book by any means, and not as deep as... not as like good of characterization as the first book, but still enjoyable. And then the first one, of course, I think is the best and the most well-rounded of the trilogy, and just overall most satisfying one. So yeah, those are my reviews and rankings for Silent Night Trilogy. What did you guys think of it? I know a lot of people read the first Silent Night, at least for the holiday season. I've seen it popping up a lot on Goodreads and other booktubers reviews and December reading wrap-ups and that sort of thing. So what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts were for this trilogy. I would recommend reading the first book, I think, but I think you could be okay with skipping the sequels. They're really not the best. I don't think they're required at all. I think if you just read the first one, you'd be okay, unless you absolutely loved it and wanted to read the sequels. But those are just my thoughts. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.